Great. All right. So we'll make a start. My name is Elisa Howlett. I'm the Member Support Coordinator for Motor Neuron Disease Tasmania. One of the ways that Motor Neuron Disease Tas support Tasmanians with MND and also with Kennedy's disease is through our electronic equipment library. So people with MND or KD can loan equipment through the library after it's prescribed by an allied health professional. So some of this equipment and the software particularly can be quite complex to prescribe and set up. So that's why we organise this two-part series. And Jessica Kennedy from Link Assistive is going to be presenting. So there's two parts to this. Today will be about a bit of an overview about what is in the library. And the second part next week will be introduce how to set up some of the complex equipment and the software. So Jessica, I might hand over to you. Jessica's a speech pathologist and an assistive technology specialist with Link Assistive. So we're very lucky to have her talking to us today. I'll pass over to you, Jessica.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Elisa said, I'm Jessica Kennedy. I'm a speech pathologist. I've been working for 12 years now across a range of different roles in the disability sector. And I've been working as an assistive technology specialist with Link Assistive for 2.5 years now almost. So that role basically is there to provide clinical support to therapists and to families who are working with people who have complex communication needs and are looking at assistive technology options. And so my role covers support for Queensland as well as Tasmania, which is why I'm here today introducing this wonderful service, the MND Tasmania Equipment Loan Pool, to you all. So let's get started. Okay. So firstly, just a quick overview of assistive technology and the type of equipment that is in the MND TAS library. So overall, assistive technology is a term that refers to any equipment or aids that support people to live independently and continue to complete their activities of daily living. Specifically today, we're going to be focusing on augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC assistive technology, as well as technology that continues to enable people to access computers and computer-based technology as well. So a comprehensive AAC assistive technology solution comprises of a number of different components. And so we'll kind of break down what those different components are, what they look like, and then what some of your options are for accessing equipment within the MND Tasmania loan pool as well that fit into those different categories. Sorry, I should have mentioned as well, if you do have any questions as we go through the webinar, if you wanted to pop them either in the chat box or the Q&A box, I'll address those at the end. So I will just go through the presentation as it is, and then we can check back in with questions at the end. So a comprehensive assistive technology AAC solution, as I said, it has a number of different components. So those components are a device, a user interface or a software, an access method, so a way for the person to access that device and software. And then we also want to think about a mounting solution. So how do we position that device, and how do we make sure that it's easily accessible for the person? So we'll break that down into a little bit more detail. So firstly, this is just a way to think more broadly about AAC technology and the different components that make up AAC technologies. And so the reason that we break this down into different components is basically because you can kind of mix and match these different components depending on what it is that the person needs and what sorts of things they need out of the technology. So all of our AAC solutions will comprise of a hardware. So that's an actual computer or a tablet that we use. Then onto that computer or tablet, you'll load some software. And there's a lot of different choices when it comes to software options. And then within that software, you'll also be loading or creating, customizing a specific page set or grid set into that software. So there's kind of, a few layers to think about: the hardware, the software, and the page set. And we make some decisions around what's going to be most appropriate at all of those levels. Obviously, hoping that that all comes together into one solution that's got the features that the person needs. The other main consideration, particularly for the population that we're talking about today, people with motor neuron disease and progressive degenerative conditions, is how they're going to then access that technology. So an access method is basically how that person makes a selection on the technology. So there are a number of different ways that we can do that. Most traditionally, those of us without any physical access considerations will be able to just use a touchscreen directly, or just use a standard mouse and keyboard to access their computer. But there are lots of different alternatives. So we can either touch directly. There are lots of different mouse alternatives that we can use as well. Somebody might want to use some voice control technology if that's their strength at the moment. If the person doesn't have any sort of control over their hands, or that's really, using their hands is very fatiguing for them, then we might look at some eye gaze technology where they're able to access their computer just using their eyes. Or another option that we can look at is using some switches to allow access to the technology. So I'm going to go into more detail about what each of these access methods look like and what some of our equipment options are. But broadly speaking, we just want to be looking at the person, seeing where their skills and strengths and where their difficulties are, and figuring out what might be the most appropriate way for them to access that technology. And then our final component is looking, as I said, at mounting. So mounting equipment is designed to, as I said, position an assistive technology device in a way that is suitable for the person. So in a way that allows them to take it into the different environments they need, in a way that puts it in a position that allows them to easily access the device using whatever access method it is that is most suitable for them. And we might need different mounting solutions for different environments. Generally, people will have a couple of different mounting options for the different places in which they're wanting to use their assistive technology. So again, we'll go into more detail about what some of the options are as we move through this presentation. But basically today, what we're wanting to do is introduce you to the specific equipment that's available in the MND Tasmania Equipment Library that fits into these key categories of that comprehensive assistive technology and AAC solution. So I've included a link on the screen there, so that will take you straight through to the PDF document that lists all of the equipment options. And I believe that you go onto the MND Tasmania website for request forms and to show you the process of how to request this equipment as well. One other document that I just wanted to draw your attention to before we delve too much further into the specific equipment that's available is this document that's available through our website, which is a feature matching document. So obviously we're going to talk through lots of different options today. And one thing that you guys as therapists will have to do is make that decision about what the best option is. And the process that we use to do that is referred to as feature matching. And this is just a tool and a resource that you can use to help guide that thinking, give you a little bit of a framework. So feature matching, is a process where we think about what are the features or the things that the person needs in an assistive technology solution. Thinking broadly about how we represent the language, what sort of vocabulary, how we access that. It sort of takes you through all those different considerations and allows you to compare different options, thinking about, you know, this option has these features, this option has these features, and seeing if there's anything missing in those, or giving you that opportunity to weigh up which features are most important to the person. So that's kind of the assessment process that you would go through, and this is a tool that you can use to help you do that. Okay, so yeah, getting into the details. So within the MND Tasmania equipment loan pool, there are a number of different hardware or device options, and these are up on the screen now. You can see that there's a few different options that look quite different. So one of the main options that's available is a Surface Pro tablet. So that is a mainstream tablet that is available, not sort of a disability specific technology, but we can run specific software on it that provides that disability specific support that people might be needing. So a Surface Pro tablet runs on a Windows platform, and so it will be compatible with any software that's available that runs on that Windows platform. A Surface Pro tablet as well, just for your knowledge, has the screen size of that is usually is around 13 inches, 12.5 to 13 inches. So it's a slightly bigger screen size than the standard iPad size. And that is what makes it quite a good option when we're looking at some of our alternative access solutions. Just giving that little bit of a bigger screen size gives people some bigger targets, which can be helpful for them. So that's sort of one feature consideration. Alternatively, there is access to an iPad as well. So an iPad obviously runs the Apple iOS technology platform, so it will be compatible with Apple apps and software. That's got a slightly smaller screen size, so about 10 inches. And yes, lots and lots of people are very familiar with that Apple and iPad platform. So, that's just something to think about when you're deciding what might suit somebody best. But there are some considerations in terms of the alternate access options available for iPads. So we'll go into that detail as well. Another option that's available is the Lightwriter. So that's not actually a product that Link Assistive supplies. So my knowledge of this product is lower, but basically it's a keyboard. Somebody who is able to type on a keyboard would be able to type their message. It would speak that out. It's quite a durable device, definitely dedicated to communication. I believe there's some compatibility with things like texting with certain phones, but basically that the Lightwriter would just be used for supporting communication, whereas your iPad and your Surface Pro tablet would allow some other features into computer access and emailing and things like that. So that's just a consideration there. And finally, we've got the voice amplifier. So that's a product that will acts as a microphone. So if somebody is actually quite clear in their speech, but they're losing volume and they're not able to project their voice in a way that allows people to be able to hear them, especially in those noisy environments, a voice amplifier might be quite a nice first step. So that people can continue to use their speech, but that volume is just supported for them. So they're able to keep communicating in a bigger range of environments. So that's an overview of kind of the hardware options that are available. Like I said, the Lightwriter and the voice amplifier are kind of standalone items. So if you're choosing one of those options, then there's not too many more considerations. It's if you're choosing the Surface Pro tablet or the iPad that these next slides are going to be applicable as options that you need to keep thinking through. So your next consideration will be your software. So what program or what software are you going to put on those tablets? So if you're choosing the iPad, then the AAC app that is available through the MND Tas Equipment Loan Pool is the Predictable app. So obviously, if you're thinking more broadly about options, there are lots of AAC apps available, but within this loan pool, Predictable is the solution that's available. So that's basically a text-to-speech option. So somebody will type out their message and it will speak it aloud. You're able to save phrases and things like that into that as well. If you're looking at the Surface Pro tablet option, then you will be needing to decide whether you'd like to use the Communicator 5 or the Grid 3 software on that Surface Pro tablet. So yeah, there is a choice to make there. And so I will go into a little bit more detail today about some of the major features of those two softwares. But our next webinar next week is going to delve into the Communicator 5 and Grid 3 softwares in a lot more detail, going through, details of the features as well as details of a basic setup for a user within each of those two software options. So overview today and then the detail next time. But basically, as an overview, Communicator 5 is an AAC software that allows access to predominantly text-based page sets. So you're able to use a keyboard to type out your messages. You're able to save messages and organize them into different categories. And then you are also able to access a range of accessible apps. So accessible apps is a term that refers to grid sets or page sets that have been designed or redesigned with the physical access needs of somebody who needs to use alternative access in mind, and it allows them to still access mainstream kind of social media type apps like Netflix, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, those sorts of things. If you think about how we would traditionally access those things, they're often quite busy pages, quite small buttons. If you're then thinking about someone, with those physical access considerations, they're quite difficult apps from an access perspective. So an accessible app redesigns the screen to allow greater, easier access to those apps. So that is something that's available within Communicator 5, although it is a paid add-on. And so I don't believe that the add-on is available in the MND TAS library. So that is something to think about. There's also grid sets that allow for environmental and computer control within Communicator 5 as well. So this slide just gives you a little bit, I guess, of a visual of what that software looks like. It is quite a standard layout. So in terms, there are a few different keyboard options in terms of a few different sizes, but basically it's quite, what you see is what you get. It's set up in this way. You can obviously customize your phrases and things like that, but you can't necessarily redesign what Communicator 5 looks like. There is lots of different resources available if you're not familiar with Communicator 5 and you wanted to learn more about that. Like I said, we will go into more detail next webinar, but this is just a bit of a resource for you to keep hold of that points you in the direction of some support and training resources, YouTube videos. You can also download a trial version of Communicator 5 so that you can explore it and kind of learn some of the features through exploration yourself. Grid 3, on the other hand, is a bit of a different software. So Grid 3 is, like I said, that software platform, and within Grid 3, you can choose a range of different page sets or organizations. So there's kind of another level of decision making within Grid 3 because all of these options on your screen, so Fast Talker, Alpha Core and Text Talker, are all designed for literate users, thinking of, that population of progressive neurodegenerative conditions. They all do have slightly different features, but that's, they're all designed with that population in mind. So once you decide to use Grid 3, you then have to decide what text-based page set you're going to use. And then see what's going to suit best. So In a few slides, I'll show you where you can get more information about each of these grid sets, but kind of just know that if you choose grid 3, you've got that extra decision to make. The advantage of that is that grid 3 is a lot more editable and customizable. And so you can really make your own customized page sets and a lot more easily within grid 3. So that if that's something that the person you're working with needs, then grid 3 might be a good option. In terms of accessible apps, there are some accessible apps available within grid 3. Some are an added pay on, but some are already included. So you will get access to some of the key accessible apps within the grid 3 software that you loan device that you will receive from MND TAS. And grid 3 also gives you access to those environmental and computer control options as well. So again, just to give you a little bit of a visual of what grid 3 might look like, these are some screenshots from the Fast Talker page set within grid 3. So you can see that this kind of creates its own home page within the grid 3 software, where you've got access to chat, which is your keyboard, messages, which is those saved phrases that you can see in the screenshot next to it, and gives you access shortcuts to things like email and phone and SMS connectivity and things like that as well. So you can see just the difference in terms of how visually different the two of them look as well. You tend to find, that people might just have a bit of a personal preference around that too. So ideally, you would be showing people what the two softwares look like, and helping them to make a decision either through downloading some of your trial software options, or showing them resources online as well is another way to do that. So equally, here are some links to some supports for the grid 3 software. Smartbox is the developer of grid 3, and they do have a really comprehensive website that has a lot of support and learning resources. Grid 3, the trial version of Grid 3 is available. It is limited to a 60-day trial though. So unlike the Communicator 5 trial, that you can continue to look at the software, but you just won't have the voice output component of the software. So it's not, functionally able to be used with somebody, but, from a clinician perspective, you're still able to keep access to it and play with it and learn about it that way. The Grid 3 trial is time limited. So you just get one 60-day trial, and it is a 60-day trial per computer. So you can't just put in a new email address and re-download a new trial. It will block you from doing that. But lots and lots of resources available for Grid 3. And like I said, we'll go into more detail about that software in the next webinar. Cool. Okay. So hardware, software, the other main decision to make is the access options. And so within the MND Tasmania Equipment Loan Library, you have a number of different access options. You have some eye gaze access options, some head tracking access options, and some switch access options. I might take us I'm going to go into detail about each of the different access options in the next few slides. So I might just jump to showing a little video. So I think, access is easiest to understand when you can see a bit of an example. So I'm just going to show a video of what each of those different access methods look like in case you aren't familiar with those. So so you can see this page has a number of different videos going into depth about each of the access methods. But we'll just watch this one here that is our overview.
An access method is how you select things on the screen. You can do it using touch. I like that. With gaze interaction. All right. Using a mouse with your hand. It's all good. Or on your head. I will tell you later. Or using scanning. Come here. Each of these can be customized to meet your needs. If you want more information, check out the videos on each access method.
So the technology that was in that particular clip is a little outdated, so the software and everything isn't current, but it just gives you a little bit of a visual overview of what those different access method options are. Because this is kind of one of your biggest points of decision when you're choosing an assistive technology solution, is thinking about how the person is going to access that solution. And so a really valuable resource that's available to do that is the access screening tool. So that's a tool that's a PDF document that's available online, and it basically gives you a bit of a framework and a structure for making decisions about what the most suitable access method is for somebody. So definitely recommend that you check that out, because basically what we're wanting to do when we're looking at possible access methods is we want to decide what is the most efficient, least fatiguing, most accurate way that somebody is able to access technology. So I'm just going to go through, what those different access methods are, and then the corresponding equipment options that you can choose if you think that that access method is most suitable for the person that you're working with. So the goal here, this is taken from the access screening tool. So this is basically your guide as to what you're looking for to determine if this is a suitable access method for somebody. And it's important to note that the order that we're going through these access methods is basically the order that you would progress through when you're doing your assessment, because it's taking us from the most to the least efficient access method option. So you want to determine, is touch access suitable? And if it is, then that's the access method that you pursue. And if it's not, then you move down the list to the next access method option. Rule that out and keep moving down the list. So the first access, and obviously with this population as well, you're considering the fact that you are expecting decline of skills and progression of disease. So you are expecting those skills to change over time. You do want to be planning into the future as well. So that would be one reason to maybe skip to a different, more complex access method, but you still want to be giving somebody the most efficient access method for now as well. So, ideally you'd be starting with, the most efficient access method, and then maybe adding different access accessories over time as those things are required and necessary. So first option obviously is touching the screen. So there's lots of different accommodations we can make to touch access to make it more successful for people. So we might add a key guard, which is a plastic grid over the screen that separates the different cells to improve accuracy. There are software settings that we can use to support that touch access as well. So lots of different options there. If somebody is able to use touch access, then basically any of your device options are suitable. So you can interact directly with a Surface Pro tablet using touch access. You can interact with the iPad, or you could consider the Light Writer as an option for an individual who can use touch access as well. The next most efficient access method is actually a hand mouse. So there's a few different things that you can do to adjust the use of a mouse. So you can use dwell rather than click access. You can change the size or the shape of the mouse to make that more efficient as well. But we won't go into too much detail about that. At the moment, there isn't any options within that category, but just useful to kind of think about and consider in your assessment process. The next option, though, is a head-controlled mouse. So for somebody to accurately use a head-controlled mouse, basically we want to see that they've got reasonably strong postural control, that they're able to keep their head upright with minimal effort, and that they are able to make some quite controlled movements with their head reliably, consistently, and again over time, because that slow controlled head movement is what's going to be read by the devices and accessing the computer. So there are two equipment options available for head controlled mice. So there is the Tracker Pro and the QHA Zono. They work in slightly different ways, but essentially they require the same sorts of skills in terms of postural and head control to be able to use those options. Both of those options are compatible with the Surface Pro tablets to plug straight in. The QHA Zono 2 also can be used with the iPad if you get an adapter cable. So if somebody is really keen on using the iPad technology, but they need the head mouse, then that would be an option as well with an adapter. Your next option to consider is eye gaze and eye tracking technology. So this is the technology that's kind of most commonly associated or thought about when we're thinking of that population of people with motor neuron disease, because basically for best eye gaze access, what we're wanting is somebody to keep their body completely still and just isolate accurate movement of their eyes. And so typically people with motor neuron disease will retain controlled movement of their eyes for a lot longer than they retain controlled movement for the rest of their body. And so that's why this is a really common technology to be used in this population. There are, again, a number of different equipment options available to you in the loan library. The PCI 5, the PCI Mini, and the Tobii Tracker 4C. So just a couple of things to note about that. So the PCI 5 is the current model, or the current most up-to-date latest technology in terms of eye tracking cameras. So that one is still available for purchase if you do happen to have some NDIS clients in your mind while you're watching this presentation as well. So out of the equipment loan pool options, the PCI 5 is the one that's still currently available for purchase. The PCI Mini is a discontinued version, so it's a previous version of the Tobii Dynavox eye tracker, and that is still compatible with both of your software options. The Tobii Tracker 4C is actually an eye gaze camera that was developed for use in gaming. So it wasn't designed necessarily for a disability-specific population, and so it isn't compatible with all of your AAC software options. So that option is only compatible with Communicator 5 software. You can't use it with Grid 3 software. So that's just something to be aware of. Also, all of these eye tracking technology options are only compatible with those Surface Pro tablets. So you aren't able to use them with the iPad, only the Surface Pro option. So kind of that's the detail about the equipment options that are available. But just to give a little bit more information about eye tracking technology in general for those people who are not familiar with it. Basically, eye gaze technology works by sending out an infrared signal that bounces off your retina and tracks where your eyes are looking on the screen. So traditionally, you will see a dot or something that's coming up on the screen that's showing you whereabouts you're looking. And what you need to do is hold your gaze steady for a set amount of time to enable a click function. And so that holding your gaze steady for the set amount of time is referred to as dwell. So you have to dwell and look closely and steadily at an item, and that will click. You've got adjustability in terms of how long you have to look at the item for to get the click. So you can make that slower or faster depending on what the person needs. But yeah, that's the traditional eye gaze access method. I'm just going to show a quick little snippet of video of somebody using eye gaze access, just again to give people a visual if it's something that they haven't seen before. So there you can see that this person is looking at a square. And they've got the clock that's moving around. And so once the clock closes, then that is creating a click.
Yesterday night, I saw my auntie.
Yeah, and then they can.
Fantastic. And
much easier to see rather than try and explain some of these kinds of things. So, cool. And yeah, so their eye gaze setup is really, really key to successful eye gaze use. And so we are going to go into the detail of this in our next webinar. But basically, there are resources that are available for you when you are setting up eye gaze. We want to position the equipment correctly, lots of different considerations there. We want to check that the eyes are being tracked appropriately, and then we want to calibrate the device so that it tracks our eyes more accurately. So calibration is the process that we go through to teach the computer what our eyes look like as they look at different parts of the screen. So everybody's eyes are going to look slightly different. So each individual person is going to want to calibrate the device to get the most accurate use of it. And so that means we definitely want the individual to be calibrating the device. We don't want us or a caregiver to calibrate and then put it in front of the person. It's really important that they do that process themselves because all of our eyes are unique and individual. And so, so just some considerations for eye gaze tracking, positioning, checking our track status, and calibrating is really important as well. And our final access method that we might consider for somebody who's got some physical access challenges is switch scanning. So the reason that we consider this as kind of our last resort, last option, is that it is the most inefficient method of accessing a communication device or computer, because we're not interacting directly with the screen. So because we're waiting, for the software to scan through our options, or we're having to physically scan through the options ourselves, it is much more inefficient, can be more fatiguing as well. But it is often and sometimes one of the only options that's available to somebody, in which case, of course, we pursue that. So the MND TAS library has a number of different switches. Switch assessment and switch access is a really big topic because there are lots of different things to consider. We need to think about what type of switch we're going to use, and so that's where your equipment loan options become relevant, because you're thinking about all the different types of switches, what type of movement we need, where we're going to put the switch, all of those sorts of things. And which switch you choose, where you put it, and what movement you choose will really be based on that alternate access assessment that you're completing with the person. From a practical perspective, what all the switches from the MND TAS loan pool come with a joy cable interface and a switch clamp mount. So you've got the switch clamp mount, so you're you've got lots of flexibility with where you're putting the switch, and the joy cable enables you to use the switches with the Surface Pro tablets. So that's what will be most easily available. And then you can also use switch access with an iPad if the person were to have access to an alternative Bluetooth interface that's compatible with iPad as well. So yeah, you can switch access iPad, but you'd need an extra accessory if you were looking at options that are available just within your equipment loan pool. So as I said, scanning is indirect, so meaning it's inefficient, but it can be beneficial, or the most suitable option for people, particularly those with visual impairments who aren't able to use that eye gaze access, who might need some auditory input as well. So there are definitely times when scanning is the most suitable option. But yeah, we just want to think about if there's anything more efficient that might suit the person. A final option to consider is actually combining eye gaze and switch access. So in the previous video we saw that in order to click, we had to use that dwell function. So we had to hold our gaze steady and look until the software made it click. If we combine eye gaze and switch access, basically then our eyes work as the cursor and the switch works as the mouse click. So we can look, click, look, click. And so if there is a suitable switch position, then that can be quite an efficient way for some people to access their computer or device. Some people find the coordination of having to hold their gaze steady and then clicking to be challenging. And some people just find that click movement becomes fatiguing really quickly. And so it might not be suitable for them, but it is definitely an option that's worth considering. So I'm just going to show you a video now of what that looks like. So in this particular video, the switch that we're using is an EMG switch, which recognizes muscle twitch activity, and that's what is being recognized as the switch click, but it would work in exactly the same way if you plugged in a standard Jelly Bean switch and were hitting that to click. So it just shows you what the software looks like when you're using the eye gaze and switch combination access. All right, the volume does get a bit louder.
And I've got the patient unit on my left arm, and in settings here, gaze interaction settings, the activation method is set to switch. So by moving my left fingers, it will just do a single click. So going to speak, close keyboard, missed that, close keyboard. Let's go to desktop and activate computer control. So same thing here, I've set up.
Yeah, so you could see there, that's Bus, who is our owner and director of Link Assistive. He was using Communicator 5 software. So that's the software that you could see up on the screen. The red circle was tracking his eyes, and then he was holding that steady and then clicking with the switch. So you could see for him, that was a really efficient way of moving through the software. It was much quicker than if he'd had a dwell access on. Yeah, so that's just another nice option to know about and to consider. Okay, so yeah, that was all access options. That was, yeah, a big chunk of what we needed to talk about. Your final thing that you want to be thinking through is mounting options. So how are we going to position the device, as I said, so that somebody is easily and comfortably able to access it across all of their different environments? options here are a wheelchair mount. So that is a mount that attaches directly to the person's chair, so that if there's somebody that's going out and about quite a lot, they can continue to take their device with them easily, and they know that it's going to be positioned well for them to use it in whatever environment they're in, as long as they're in their wheelchair. Practicality to consider with the MND TAS equipment loan pool is that the wheelchair mount is available for loan, but the frame clamp, so the piece that connects the wheelchair mount to the chair, needs to be purchased separately. And that's because there are lots and lots of different options for frame clamps. They really vary from wheelchair to wheelchair. So if you are wanting to explore a wheelchair mount loan option, then get in touch with me. I can help you to choose the frame clamp that will be most suitable for the person's chair. A desktop mount is available as well. So that's a mount that connects to a desk or a table. So that's an option that you'd consider if the person is, often maybe at home, they've got a table that is in a good spot where they, are often sitting centrally in their house, and they're wanting to use their device there. Noting that the person will still have to be able to sit somehow at that table, so either in a chair or a wheelchair or something like that, so that they are in a good position to access their device. And then a floor stand is an option that's available, that's commonly used when you've got somebody who is spending a lot of time in a more reclined position, because you can bring the floor stand up over the person and you've got a lot of adjustability in terms of height and angles and things like that. This is the option that we recommend for people spending a lot of time in recliner chairs or in bed. And you can use the floor stand moving between recliner and bed as well. So if someone's spending a lot of time at home in those sorts of positions, then a floor stand is going to be the best option for them. Again, so there's lots of different supports available to learn more about mounting and to choose what mount might be most suitable. So the Rehadapt website is a great resource. They've got PDF product guides that show you all of the different product options within those wheelchair, table stand, floor stand categories. And then each individual product has its own user guide in terms of how to set up that item and adjust it and things like that. They've also got a series on the YouTube channel called Mounting Made Easy, which is videos of assembling and putting together all of their mounts, which I find really helpful just to be able to watch somebody else do it. So they're kind of your practical resources for choosing and putting things together. And then we also have a webinar series if mounting is something that you want to learn more about more generally. We've got a webinar series called Mounting Mondays on our website, which was presented by Robert Coles from Rehadapt. And there's 7 different webinars, but taking you through topics like, basics of mounting, choosing a wheelchair mount, choosing a floor stand, switch mounting, all of those sorts of things. So they're really helpful if that's an area of interest for you. So yeah, lots and lots of things to think about, considerations and options. I guess in terms of practicality and what is available to support you, most of the more complex products, your eye gaze products, those sorts of things in the MND TAS equipment library are link assistive products. And so we are available to support you and able to support you with using those products. So that includes clinical support from myself. So that's catching up with you, having a discussion about your client, where they're at, and brainstorming what type of equipment might be useful. So kind of helping you through that feature matching process. But then also technical support is available as well. So if you're having trouble getting the eye gaze camera connected or getting the head mouse working, those sorts of things, then you are able to call for support. We do recommend that you book that support in advance if you can. So there's a function on our website to do that, just so that a technical support person is definitely available, during your appointment time. But if you do have anything pop up in a session, it's always worth giving us a call and just seeing if someone is around to assist you when you need it. There is also quite a lot of recorded webinars on our website as well. So we've got on a whole range of different software topics, on eye gaze trials, on Communicator 5, Introduction to Access and Positioning. So there are heaps of learning resources available in our recorded webinars section of our website. And then on our website as well, there is the Link Assistive Wiki, which is where our technical support team will basically put their frequently asked questions and solutions. So if they, have a few people calling up with the same sort of question often, then they'll put the step-by-step instruction of how to troubleshoot that issue and pop it up in the Link Assistive Wiki. So if you aren't able to get in touch with anybody, my next step is always just to check the wiki and see if the question's been asked before and if the instructions are there. Just finally a little, so we've talked about, all the AAC assistive technology, but there are a few other pieces of assistive technology not related to communication in the MND Tasmania equipment loan pool. So there are things like a falls detector, there is a switch adapted door chime, and the Nida robotic feeder as well that are also available to help you support your clients as well. So that was all of the kind of content that I had planned to go through today. Always feel free to get in touch with us at Link Assistive with any questions. Feel free to email me directly as well. So we might stop the webinar recording now, but feel free to stick around and chat through questions if you have any as well.